ourselves for exactly who we are. This event could not have been possible without the collaborative efforts of several student support programs on campus, including La Casa Engagement Center, the LGBTQ plus Engagement Center, and the Veterans Resource Center. And now it's my pleasure to introduce one of our veteran students, Mr. Richard Chavez, who will introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this special day. I'd like to introduce the first American soldier injured in the Iraq War. Alva was held as an American hero. While he lost his leg in combat, Eric's spirit remained stronger than ever. Upon retirement, he came out as gay and went on to play an instrumental role in the repeal of the military's Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy on gay, lesbian, and bisexual services members, working with members of Congress to end a discriminatory practice. A former spokesperson for the Human Rights Campaign, Eric shares his poignant story of hope and courage, urging audiences to make the world a better place for those who have felt pain and anguish of hate and discrimination. Drawing on his experience in the for equality, he offers insight on the difficulties faced by gays and lesbians in the military, emphasizing that by doing the right thing, working hard, and standing for what you believe in, and being true to yourself, any obstacle can be conquered. Please join me in welcoming Eric Alva.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that warm introduction and everything. And I've already forgot your name. Richard. And thank you for your service. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. Um, I normally don't stand behind podiums because I always tell people that podiums and I are almost the same height. And I think it's a challenge because I'm only 5'1". These days, I tell people who oppose me, I'm like, be careful because I'm not only 5'1", I'm 5'1", gay and a Marine. So that can be a really bad mix of, upsetting someone. So today, thank you. My name is Eric Alva. It is a pleasure. It is a blessing. I am grateful to be here at RCC. You all have a wonderful, beautiful campus. The whole area is familiar to me because I actually was stationed in 29 Palms, California. So I'll tell you about my deployments, but I've seen March Air Force Base, let's just say 3 times when I had to be deployed. So I'm very familiar with the area. I was stationed at El Toro, California for 3 years in Orange County. I always tried to get stationed on the East Coast, but California was pretty much a place that I still call like my second home because I did 9 years here and then 3 years in Japan on various years. But it's a beautiful state. I love it, and I'm always happy to be back. Today is National Coming Out Day, so I identify as gay. It's also Saturday is the end of Hispanic Heritage Month, which I am Hispanic from September 15th to October 15th. October is also National Disability Awareness Month. I lost my right leg in the war, so I am disabled. Leading into November, we lead right into, as a Marine Corps veteran, Veterans Day on the 11th of November. And I'm also, according to Ancestry DNA, up until about 4 or 5 years ago, I am 53% Native American now. So those are my identities. Those are my walks of life. And I'm going to share my story with you. And it's a unique story on how I got to where I am today. And so I was setting my timer because I sometimes, if no one tells me, and I try to just stay at like 30 minutes, and then we'll open it for some Q&A because then I will keep going, and then all of you are like, he's been up there for an hour, sit down. And I'm also an adjunct professor, so those of you going to school, I know it can be like when your professors are talking, and even I always try to let my students out early because I always used to be in college too when the professor's like, okay, you're already going over, it's 5 minutes, let us go. So anyways, but I arrived into town Sunday, coming from San Antonio, Texas. Anyone ever been to San Antonio? It's a beautiful, beautiful city. If you ever get the chance to go, rich in Hispanic culture, even with some Mexican culture. We always call things like a chalupa, which you all call, I think, a tostada. There's certain things on what we see as a taco, and then you all call something different. I shouldn't say you all. I don't mean it like in a biased way, but it's just interesting how the culture changes or is diverse from different states. But growing up in Texas, I have a twin sister, an older sister. My parents are still alive, and my dad served in Vietnam during 67, 68. My grandfather served in World War II in Korea, so I have a long line of history. They were Army. I didn't go into the Army. I decided to go into the Marine Corps right after high school, or at least I tried. And being 5'1" at 18 years old, I was only 90 pounds. I'm not 90 pounds anymore, especially when you live in San Antonio and eat a lot of Tex-Mex food, which I love, carne guisada. So, um, so after high school, I did attend San Antonio Community College for 2 semesters until I could finally meet the weight and the requirements to be in the military. And then, of course, joining the Marine Corps at the apprehension of my mother, because she already had been through my father going to war, and she, as their only son, she never wanted me to be in any conflict, such as because we saw the effects of what war did to my father, coming home with severe post traumatic stress, becoming an alcoholic. I will say today that he just passed in July 7th, this past 2022, 30 years sobriety. So I'm very proud of my father. And so my mom didn't want me to see any effects of war, stuff like that. But of course, going against her wishes, I had to follow my destiny. I wanted to be a United States Marine. I wanted to join the military. And so eventually I got into the military and going to boot camp in 1991, right at the start of Desert Storm, which was the first invasion into Iraq, or because Iraq had invaded Kuwait and we liberated the country of Kuwait. So eventually, my first deployment came, which coming up this December 19th of 1992. So if my math is correct, 2022, it will be 30 years that I was actually sent to the country of Somalia in Africa and to the capital of Mogadishu. And some of you are young, you probably weren't born at that time, but most people will familiarize it with Black Hawk Down, the movie. So I lived in the soccer stadium, but I was there. I left the country before that whole helicopter tragedy. And so, again, finding my passion, my discipline, my maturity, my professionalism, my leadership, really growing into the man who I am today, that I really loved becoming a United States Marine. So I started to reenlist. And every base I was at, like I literally would take courses. I went 2 years at Irvine Valley College in Orange County. While I was in 29 Palms, I took courses for Chapman University. I actually thought one day I would graduate from Chapman University or San Diego State University when I retired. I had planned to live in California, but that didn't happen. And I'll share with you on how that changed. But eventually, everything changed in 2001. And what I mean by that is that we got attacked. We got attacked on September 11th in Washington, D.C., Pennsylvania, and New York City. The whole world changed as we see it today. So in 2001, after the attacks, most of the East Coast military bases, or even in Camp Lejeune, most of the Marines and Army bases, I think Fort Bragg is out there, they were deployed to Afghanistan for the start of Operation Enduring Freedom. And so in 2002, somewhere in the summer, which now leading into the fall, we started hearing rumors. Again, it was only a year after the attack, so the war was very fresh. We were very vulnerable. We were very on high alert. But around this time, we started hearing, like even right now, October of 2002, we started hearing possibility of Iraq having weapons of mass destruction. So we were afraid, or we were worried that Saddam Hussein, who was still a threat, would use those to somehow attack us or our allies overseas. So by the fall, like right now, which we are in fall, November, December, I had already received orders, or I was told, you can't go home for Christmas. You need to prepare, because at the beginning of January 2003, you are going to be deployed to the Middle East. And so on January 15th, I did not go home for Christmas. I flew my mom out. She flew into Ontario. She stayed with me on the base for 4 days. I felt bad because all those 4 days I was just at work. But so eventually, I got into the Middle East on January 15th of 2003. And so for the next several days and weeks, we poured thousands and thousands, up to 100,000 of men and women, military, into the Middle East for the possible invasion into Iraq. We waited like through the rest of January, all of February, into March, and we waited because we wanted to see if Saddam Hussein was going to comply with the UN inspectors looking for those weapons. Of course, he never let them in the country, and the commander in chief at the time, the president, President Bush, finally gave the order now to go into Iraq. So on March 21st, I was on the first wave going into Iraq with First Marine Division, which is headquartered in Camp Pendleton, Oceanside, California. I was stationed in 29 Palms with 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines. I was on a logistical convoy, and on the morning of March 21st, 2003, at around 9 a.m., I don't remember exactly what the time was, but we crossed the border from Kuwait into Iraq. It was the start of Operation Iraqi Freedom. And so the ground forces. Our mission that morning was to secure the city of Basra. If you look at a map of Iraq, you have major cities. I think you have Basra, Nazariya, Fallujah, and then Baghdad. And so before we got to Basra, we stopped at a position called Al Zubair, and it was there that we regrouped. We had to figure out who was going to go in through the right side of the city, the right flank, the left flank, up the middle, because we knew we were going to face some Iraqi resistance. And so I was one of the tail end of the vehicles of that convoy when we got into this position. When I got into this position, I got off the vehicle because we'd already been traveling for a couple of hours when we crossed the border of Kuwait. I got off the vehicle, probably walked from here to where the window is to use the restroom because we had been traveling. Got back on the vehicle as time was elapsing. The second time I got off, I went to the back of the Humvee to get some supplies for another Marine that he needed. Got back in the seat of my vehicle. The third time I got off my vehicle, my vehicle was to warm up my MRE, which is our meal ready to eat. I decided to eat because the day before when we got orders that we were moving forward, we had to tear all the tents down. I had 11 Marines under my supervision as a staff sergeant. I was the most senior Marine in that section, passing 12 years. So I was worried about them. I had a 17-year-old who was really scared of going in. It was war. And I even told the Marines, some of us may get hurt. Some of us may not even come home. And I was just being realistic. And so I decided to eat my MRE on the hood of the vehicle. And MREs, they come with like all these packages where the food is not that great. I still wonder why, and March will be 20 years in 2023, why I decided to warm up my meal. Maybe I thought, heck, I'm in Iraq. I'm going to eat a warm meal because we're still waiting to see when we're going to go into Basra. And so I opened the meal. I started to warm it up. And as I just mentioned, March 21st, 2023 will be 20 years. And as I stand here sharing with all of you, I do reflect and I wonder what it was I was going to do when I turned around and took those few steps. Was I going to go back to sit in my seat? Was I going to go back to the back of the Humvee? What it was I was going to do, and I don't remember. I probably will never remember, because after 2 or 3 steps, that's when the explosion went off. I had triggered the landmine. And you can see from my hand, I was gripping my right arm and my index finger was gone. And you can see how my hand is today. It doesn't do the same as like your hand with a pinch or as such, because of all the nerve damage, and my wrist was severely broken. I almost lost the arm. But I remember laying on the ground. When you watch movies with terrorist attacks or bombings and people in the movies are like that survive and they have the ringing sensation on the movies. So that's what it was really like. As I was laying on the ground, gripping my right arm, and the hand was covered in blood. My hearing was gone. There was just an extensive amount of ringing. And they took away my pistol as the combat medics, which we call Navy corpsmen, came to start helping me. It's interesting because I still remember, I mean, like if it were yesterday, that I thought I was paralyzed because I tried to sit up, but I think my body was in shock. I couldn't move, and so I didn't know what had happened. I knew it was just something terrible, and I was in so much pain. Um, my fear, laying there looking at the sky, and it was like kind of cloudy. Well, I see the sun coming out now, but it was kind of overcast, and I remember thinking, I'm going to die here. And the reason I started thinking that was because, again, I was on the front wave of forces going into Iraq. So we hadn't set up any medical facilities, any like dining hall, mess hall facilities. We hadn't set up any facilities of support. So I thought, I started praying. I started really just, saying goodbye to my mom, my dad. And I thought, oh my goodness, what is this going to do to my mother? Um, and because I thought the only way to get help is for me to be flown out of there. And so all I kept wondering was, and by this time my hearing was coming back. And in this time, which I don't ever know how long I was there, another explosion went off. So there was two explosions that went off, and you could just see the mass chaos as I was turning my head and looking at people yelling for people to stop moving, or all kinds of things that were going on. Eventually, I heard the sound of the helicopter, and I had a sign of relief because I thought, like, hurry up, you need to put me on the helicopter, hurry up, you need to get me back to, somewhere, a hospital. So I was flown back to Kuwait. I was taken off the helicopter. I didn't know how many people were injured, but there were people who were injured because when the bomb went off, just like you see on movies, people that were nearby or as close to me were hit with shrapnel, hit as injured as well. And I was taken into a makeshift tent hospital, given anesthesia with the morphine that I was already given on the battlefield, and then I was out. When I awoke, there were all these beds in front of me that were like, set up. They were made hospital beds. There were all these beds next to me, and no one was in them. All these beds were empty. I was the only one in there. I was on the far right bed. I remember those of us who've ever had surgery, when you come out of surgery and with the anesthesia and you're still kind of like, it's moving around. My arm was all bandaged up. My arm was broken, which I have severe nerve damage. Well, it will never, ever straighten out because that's just the way it's going to be for the rest of my life. My left leg was broken. The blast had snapped my leg in half. And I remember laying at that 45-degree angle when you're in the hospital in recovery or something. I remember looking at the right side of my sheet, and it was just flat. So the doctors had to amputate my right leg to keep me alive. And so according to the government, I don't know, the United States or Department of Defense, the Navy, the Marine Corps, I was only in Iraq for 3 hours when it started. I had become the first American injured in Operation Iraqi Freedom. It was not something that I wished for, or it wasn't a distinction I wanted, but it came upon me. And so with that came like publicity, I guess, in a way, because again, we had just, passed the 1-year anniversary of 9/11. We started the war in Iraq. So now we were fighting two wars: Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan, Operation Iraqi Freedom in Iraq. Hundreds of thousands of U.S. service members, some probably that you are familiar with, and family members, were now at war. And so the country was united. And so you saw people wanting to help the service members who were getting injured. I think at that time you really saw a lot of people, because I remember coming home, you saw like all these yellow ribbons on porches, in City Hall, on trees, to show like, hey, I'm supporting the troops, or I have someone overseas. You saw the little yellow magnets, the ribbons on people, back of the people's cars, where that said, I support the troops. So getting injured, and then getting injured being first, the press wanted to talk to me. The press wanted to talk to me. They wanted to talk to all the military people who were getting injured, but they wanted to talk to me to see like, what was it like? Did you shoot anyone? What were, all the things that media can ask you, or they just wanted to see what the war was like. Are you all being okay, or how's it going? And so I eventually ended up on Oprah Winfrey. From the hospital, my hospital, as I was recovering, I eventually ended up in People magazine. So I eventually got this kind of distinction. I used to say notoriety, but my mom actually came to one of my talks one time, and she's like, stop using that word. You're not notorious. You didn't rob a bank. You're not, don't use notoriety. And I'm like, and my mom's a school teacher, so of course she's going to correct my grammar. So I say distinction. So people knew me. I had become a name. I ended up on CNN, things like that, giving interviews. I spent 7 months in the hospital in recovery and talking about overcoming life's obstacles, which I call them little hiccups or speed bumps. You know, we have those every day of our lives, but I'm going to share with you perspective towards the end of my talk on how I live my life every day. So remember, and you can see I lost that part of my index finger, right? So if this is called our everyday pinch, we use it to put on our earrings. We use it to, if you're like putting on a necklace, you use it to clasp that necklace. You use it to button your shirts. You use it to zip your jackets, your trousers. You use it to put on little pins like I have on my jacket. You know, it's our everyday pinch. And unfortunately, I am right hand, dominant. So I had to learn how to live again. I had to learn how to walk again. And so that was something that was part of my life. I eventually left the military, retired, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I tried to kill myself once because I thought I can't live like this. My life is over. My career is over. What am I ever going to do again? But then of course, as time went on, I went back to school. I thought I wanted to major in accounting. I thought I wanted to be a school teacher like my mom. I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist. And then eventually I got into social work. And it was interesting because then I started to hear words like empathy, which I had never really paid attention to or knew what that was. My nurse in the hospital would come in and say, Eric, I know what you're going through. And I was like, I would be so angry and hateful. I'd be like, no, you don't. You still have both your legs. But I didn't understand she was trying to be empathetic. She was trying to imagine or at least see it, feel like what I was going through. I learned about diversity. I learned about identities. I learned about, intersectionality of the 5 identities that I was telling you about my life. I started to learn who I was. But then nothing was coming of that. I think what the turning point was for me was in 2005. Again, I was retired in June of 2004, but in 2005, Texas had a proposition which was proposed to ban same-sex marriage in the state constitution. And I thought nothing of it. I really shrugged my shoulders as I was studying social work. And it was interesting because it passed overwhelmingly. And I remember my neighbors, William and Tanya. William was retired Air Force, and they were very religious. And I remember William and Tanya, one day when I came home, from school, they had a sign on their yard. And it was a little stick figure. You know, when you play hangman, the game with your friends or something, it was a little stick figure of a man. It had the plus sign, and a little stick figure of a woman. It had the plus sign, the man plus the woman, and then it had an equal sign, and it said marriage. So I remember coming home, and William and Tanya came over, and they had a sign. They're like, "Can we put this in your yard?" And then, of course, I was like, "No, I'm good. No, thank you." And I was like, "Really?" And but then 2006 came, and of course, I'm getting further in my studies. I'm learning a lot. I'm learning about a lot, especially about social justice. And so in 2006, I started paying attention to more things going on in the news. And I see 8 more states, and I think California was one of them that year too. 8 more states have proposed state constitutional bans. And I started to really just open up and say, this is unfair. I fought for people's rights, people's freedoms, people's liberties, people's lives for when we were attacked on 9/11. And that's when I finally, and I think the way the rhetoric or what people were talking about on TV is, you even hear today on some of the things, what people can say about a marginalized population, especially like about immigrants or undocumented immigrants, because I live in Texas. So I finally just said enough is enough. And I went to my parents, which they already knew I was gay. And I said, I need to tell my story. And my mom was like, everybody already knows you were first. And I said, no, not that. I said, I need to tell my story. She goes, what, Eric? And again, growing up in a Hispanic Roman Catholic family, going to catechism, doing your communion, your confirmation, and such like that. Um, in that tradition, we don't air our laundry. You keep those things to yourself and things like that. And my mom was like, not that my mom was disappointed in me. My mom just was protecting me because again, she was apprehensive and she goes, I don't know if you should do that, Eric. She goes, every time someone likes to, you know, fight for civil rights, look what happens. Martin Luther King, Harvey Milk from San Francisco, Medgar Evers, she goes, people will try to attack you. People will try to hurt you. I said, Mom, that's the risk I'm going to take. I said, I need to do this. And so if I hadn't been in the news before, so when I finally decided to come out, it was Good Morning America broke the story. And it was Jake Tapper, who's now with CNN, who interviewed me. And so the first American injured in Operation Iraqi Freedom was coming out as gay. And I was now going to work with members of Congress to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We were fighting two wars, and we were firing thousands of valuable, skilled men and women solely for just being gay, and I didn't see it right. But not only that, it was further because I remember being interviewed when I decided to come out. I ended up in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the LA Times, the Chicago Tribune, you name every major USA Today. I was now going to finally tell my story. And someone, reporter asked me, why now, Staff Sergeant Alva? Why now? And I said, because it's the right thing to do. I shed blood for this country. I've almost died for this country. I said, but the liberties, the opportunities, the freedoms, the happinesses, I said, everything I was fighting for was for everyone, not just the selected few. If you were female and of a darker pigment, I'm sorry, but you don't get that privilege. Or if you were transgender, you definitely don't have any rights. I lost my leg, and I didn't have the full equality of what the blanket of freedom in this country stands for. I'll give you an example. We're all familiar with the Melendez brothers. Not to talk bad about them, but Melendez brothers both got married while in prison. They'll never be released. And I served my country. I have a Purple Heart. I lost my leg. And you're telling me I could never get married because I'm worse than a criminal. Not just for that privilege or opportunity or blessing. There are people who are being fired from their jobs solely for being gay or even the color of their skin or being a female because they're not qualified or like, no. You can't have that job because it's never belonged to a female. I hope I'm alive today to still see that one day when we have a female president or when we have a female chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. Because you do not have to be a man to hold that position. We see now more than ever, females are getting the due respect that they so deserve. And it's not because, it's like, oh, we need to do this because they're whining or they're crying. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. If she is the better sniper or the person that has the best quality skills, talents, and ideas, then guess what? She deserves the job. And let me tell you, I'm a big time feminist. I'm big on promoting with legislation for gender equal pay. I'm an activist. I became an activist. So I started working with members on repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Again, because it was the right thing to do. Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I will give you a quick insert on history. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was passed and signed into law in 1994. What it did was it forced people to go to work every day and lie about who they were. And imagine if those of you who work, well, because since COVID, a lot of us still work from home or things like that. But before even COVID or even now, a lot of us on virtual calls, the pictures you have up behind you, the pictures you have up in your cubicle, the ring you put on your finger. People used to say, I don't see why you have to why you have to come out, Eric. Why can't you just be private about that? I'm private about my life. And I'm like, okay, when you put those pictures up or you put that ring on your finger or, something to show, who you are, guess what? Your life is not private anymore. It's public. People will see like, oh, I see a ring on his finger. So he's married or she's married or things like that. People will come into your office. And those of us who have offices like I do back at school, and I have pictures up of my husband or anything like that. I've had someone come out and who didn't know my identity and say, oh, did you serve with him? And I'll be like, no, that's my husband. Now, should I have to lie and say, no, we served in the military together? No, I'm not afraid to lose my job because where I work, they respect who I am. And that's what, that's where we are today. And that's why we worked on repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell, because it was to allow people to go to work every day, go to school every day, go home every day, and be their authentic selves, be who you are. Um, it was something I needed to do because it was the right thing, even though I got hate mail, I got death threats. I had someone who even sent me an email saying, "Too bad you didn't get your head blown off in Iraq, you FAG, instead of losing your leg," things like that. There are hateful people in there, but love is going to win over hate. We know that. We come from all walks of life, and the three pillars I want to leave you with as I start to close, and tell you about my perspective, is that, and for all of you here or listening, and you can tell people I said this, repeat it. Nobody owns your happiness. It is yours. Nobody owns your happiness. The second one is respect. I live in a state very conservative, true, but there are people from all walks of life. And if you want to have that respect, Senator so and so, then you must give me the same amount of respect. So everybody deserves to be respected. And three, you want to feel safe in your identity or who you are, where you live, who you love, or where you work. Those are the three things I think if you can't wake up every morning and repeat those three things that you would hope for someone else, because you want them, then you have a problem. You need to, wrestle with that or process with that. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. We're all human. We all have prejudice. Not anyone can stand up and say, "Eric, I don't have prejudice." We all have biases. We all have boundaries. We have prejudice. It's in our human nature. But you have to understand why you have those biases and boundaries and process that. Again, you have to be able to live your life authentically. I am blessed and happy to be gay, disabled, Latino, Native American, and a veteran. Those are my walks of life. And I'm going to share in every opportunity I can. I'm going to advocate for, African Americans, Asian Americans. I'm going to women's rights, immigrants, you name it. I'm going to advocate for people's lives because when I woke today, which I arrived in on Saturday to California, and then I was promised today, and here comes my perspective. I was promised today, and I'm so fortunate and thankful to everyone who brought me here. It's been a blessing, and because when I wake tomorrow to go home back to Texas, you know, then I've been promised another day. But until then, it's just a word. Tomorrow doesn't exist. So live your lives fully, and always be authentic. Don't ever let anyone take that away from you and tell you that you're less than someone because of the color of your skin or your gender or your identity or who you love. Never let anyone own your happiness. When I lost my leg, again, I tried to kill myself because I thought the world was just, too mean or whatever. But I was wrong. When I actually started to go to physical rehab in the hospital, I saw a woman who was missing both her legs. I saw a young Marine, 23 years old, who was missing both his legs and an arm. I started to see people who were burned 5, 10, 15% more because of the roadside bombs that they survived in Iraq or Afghanistan. And I thought, and that's when it hit me, and I'm not picking on anyone here, but that's when it hit me like, shame on you, Eric. Because when you think you have it bad, someone else always has it worse than you. Yesterday, because I'm staying at the Hampton Inn down the street, I walked over to get some airborne because, I just wanted to make sure my immune system was up. I'm 5-time booster or COVID shot, 3 boosters, 2 COVIDs. There was a gentleman who was panhandling and I went in and I was buying me some airborne and I bought him a water. I try to help where I can. And he was very thankful, things like that. But always be thankful for the blessings where you live. Everyone here, this is a great institution. What a beautiful campus, But also, if you plan to be an ally, which some people say, like my Marine buddies, after I came out and they're like, one day or a couple of them were like, they would call and they're like, "I learned something, Eric. So I'm an ally." I'd be like, "Okay, what does that mean?" "Well, I support you." I said, "Thank you. I support you too. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, why do you support me? Well, I support you're gay. I said, well, I support you're straight. I said, but that's not an ally. They're like, what do you mean? I said, an ally is someone who has to be visible. An ally has to produce action. They have to be able to walk with you arm in arm during a pride parade. They have to be able to stand up with you when someone is saying something ugly about you. They have to be willing to defend you in a conversation when someone else is saying something bad about a marginalized population. An ally has to be visible and willing to produce action. You can't just call yourself an ally and say, I'm an ally. I accept you. That's not an ally. An ally has to produce action. You have to have that courage and stand out with your brothers and sisters, regardless of their background. But again, life is good. I'm standing here on two good legs again. And again, always be thankful for the lives you have, and never forget to take care of others as well. This is the one life we have. And I'm having, a heck of a time. I wouldn't change anything. March 2023 will be a little hard. I have chronic pain all the time, but I'm blessed. My godson is here with me today who lives in the area. His father and I served in the Marine Corps, and so I brought him along. He got to see me speak for the first time. Thank you to Whitney Ortega. Thank you to Pamela Starr. Is she here? Thank you, Pamela. Yes, and I signed a book for you. Thank you, Dr. Cruz Soto. Thank you, meeting Al in the back. Thank you to all of you for coming, taking time out of your schedules to come hear my story. I'm not the only one with a story. We all have a story. Always remember you're not alone in your little hiccups or obstacles, or as I call them, speed bumps in life. There is always a network of resources and support groups to never ever feel like you're different or not warranted or not authentic. You are a person, and you are valuable. Thank you again for everything. And I know that Whitney and Pamela, everybody bought books. So I've been signing them. So if you want a book, please let me know. I will, sign it with your name. And I'm just thankful. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not a hero. I'm just a person with a voice who has a big heart. But also, I have my little hiccups too. I get angry or upset when someone has, when you go to the grocery store, it says 10 items or less, and you see someone, they're like, you have 30 items in your cart. Can't you read? And I'm like, Eric, remember, you just gave a talk to RCC, or when you're in traffic and you're like, really? And when people are like going all the way to the front, you're like, don't let them in. Just, you're like, don't let them in. Why do we do that? Just let them in. I mean, is it really going to be that hard to just, so what if they went all the way and they didn't want to wait in the line of traffic? So, but always be thankful. It's a good, time. It's unfortunate with war in Ukraine, or even politics. We're at midterm elections and people can be ugly. Don't let that ugliness ever, get you down. Or I say that to myself, my own advice, because it does bring me down. But always remember your loved ones, and always practice your self-care, and just always remember that you were important and nobody owns your happiness. So thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, I think we're going to do questions, right? Or yeah, I think we have time for questions. So if anyone wants to ask me a question, please, by all means, you can honestly ask me anything. That's the first part I always get. So I will start though. Some people did people know in the Marine Corps that you were gay, Eric? What do you think? They did. I broke the law. I'm not happy to say that, but the stress of people, it's in our nature to when we come back, do y'all have a winter break or anything? Or not winter break, but like midterm break? Or even when you come back from winter break, or you come back from Thanksgiving, you often, with your classmates or your colleagues, your workers, or people, you're like, so how was Thanksgiving? What did you do? It's in our nature to converse and just make conversation. It's not that we're being intrusive, we're just being natural. So when people constantly ask me, why are you always by yourself? Why don't you have a girlfriend? Why? And I got to the point, even when some of my buddies, their wives would try to set me up on a blind date or something. And I wouldn't do it. And they're like, why? I think she's hot. And I'm like, it's not that. So eventually I would actually, the people I trusted, which was not, it's like anything else. Whenever you hear something juicy, you're going to go home or you're going to tell someone else, because it's just too, gossipy to keep you to yourself. So people found out I was gay. And I did. I told people because it was just too hard to keep to myself. But that didn't change it because what people were judging me on was like, he's a pretty good darn Marine. He does his job. People judged me for my merit, my leadership, my professionalism, and they're like, I'm not turning him in. But it was a struggle. And there are people out there right now today. There could be people here on campus who are struggling with maybe even their gender identity, gender expression, who may want to transition, but are too scared on how they'll be received. There are people with disabilities because not all disabilities are visible. And I suffer from depression. I take antidepressants. I talk about my mental wellness because it's important. Um, but it's just it's something that people don't want to describe or talk about because of the fear of that stigma. How am I going to be viewed once I disclose such and such? But yes, uh, people have often asked, did people know you were gay in the military? I said yes, even though some of my friends were like, well, you don't look gay or you don't act gay. And I'm like, that's so wrong. Why do you say that? So there's a lot, and I'm 51, I'll be 52 in December. If I live to 102 or 92, I'm still learning every day. Nobody knows it all. And that's the gift of life that we're constantly learning. Again, I encourage you to get out there. And if you're not familiar with a diverse background or a walk of life that you have a question about, then research it, Google it, or just, challenge yourself to learn about it. It's important. So, yes, ma'am. I didn't feel the pressure. That's a good question. I wanted to get away from home. I was struggling with my identity. And to be honest, joining the Marine Corps, call me crazy, call me silly. No, don't call me crazy because we just don't do that to people. Um, um, I thought the Marine Corps was going to fix me. I thought because growing up, and my mom and dad didn't know, but as a Hispanic Latino man, I was supposed to go to college, you know, then find a wife, get married in a Roman Catholic church, big time wedding, everything, where you have all the groomsmen, all the, you know, bridesmaids, then the reception, then have kids, and then watch them grow. Which I have a lot of friends back in San Antonio who have gone through that, you know, and I was scared. So one of the I guess things about joining the Marine Corps, I thought it would fix me. I thought it would make me straight. I was seriously thought I was broken, and I kept thinking like I can't be like this. I can't be like this because you back in the '80s, which I grew up, and that's when AIDS came out too, and you had all these stigmas and which people still say today. All gay people are promiscuous. All gay people have AIDS or a disease. All gay people are pedophiles. Just the most ignorant, biased, ugly things. You know. But yeah, I was afraid, and but leaving home was like I think it was a choice of mine because I eventually did not want my parents to be disappointed in their son. If that makes sense. Thank you for your question. Uh, Let me go. Yes, sir. I have now. I have now. It is, and so I have friends who were you former military? Thank you for your service. Air Force. Yeah, you were the smart one. Marines eat crayons. So thank you for your service. So you trained at Lackland. Yes, where I live. And so the Pentagon now celebrates Pride Month. They do a lot of things for Pride Month. Uh, um, September 20th of 2022 was the 11-year anniversary that the services have now been open. But again, when Don't Ask, Don't Tell it was repealed only for gay, lesbian, bisexual individuals. Never in the writing When we repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and 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 I missed that part of my talk because my talks are not rehearsed. They change every time. And I had one this morning, and I have two on Thursday. I had two last week, and I travel quite a bit. But when we repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I actually stood right behind President Obama as I was watching him as he was like, well, he's left-handed, you know, and so I actually watched him sign the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but it never included transgender individuals, which now we have included them. And so there's a lot of bases. I don't know. There's still a lot of biases, but I actually was visiting in Yucca Valley. Do you all know where Yucca Valley is? So that's what one of my other godsons live in there. I have three godsons from all three Marine brothers. And so his father retired as a master sergeant. And I was asking him, I said, so what's it like in the military? Are gay people out? He goes, you wouldn't believe what it's like. He goes, nobody has a problem with it. You know, people are out. They celebrate Pride Month. He goes, you have some people who hate it, but what has happened now, it's changed. It's like a complete 180. If you have a problem with it, the people who have a problem with it, now they're the ones who are the minority and they keep their mouth shut, you know, because things have changed, but we're not perfect. But then some people, because you said something, there are people who will, like, if I went to you and said, you know, I never told anyone and I'm not going to, I'm gay. And someone's like, well, you should be out. We need more people to come out. You can't force anyone to come out. It has to be their decision that when the time is ready. You should never out someone. You should never tell someone like, just let you know, so and so has HIV. You should never do something like that. Something that's personal to someone's walk of life. They have to come to their point in life, their terms when they are ready to talk about it. And because there's a lot more going on back home with their families. I've met people in their 60s who have never come out, and again, it's everyone's, they have to find that own path of life. But bases everywhere, you see more and more. Again, September last month, we celebrated 11 years of now more than ever, the services being more open. I've met so many transgender military members right now in uniform, and their units don't have a problem. If someone has a problem, then they're going to get corrected. But again, we don't really hear about it because that's the training. Again, we don't live in a perfect world. I'm sure there's some very religious people who still don't accept, or colonels or enlisted sergeant majors, or you name it. But the good outnumber the bad, because again, we stop looking at the stereotypes, the stigmas that person is just an awful person. They're not worthy. They're going to destroy the foundation of our security. We finally saw that person is a valuable leader, professional, skilled, talented. Their ideas, everything they have, is contributing to what we talk about, to serve our country, or to even maybe retire and then go work at Amazon, go work, for the hotel industry, the retail industry, the car industry, corporate America, Raytheon, you name it, companies. And companies are getting it right, because I talk about that with companies on diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can't practice diversity to your clients if you're not starting with your coworkers, your colleagues. Because then you're getting it backwards. How can you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, if you're like, well, we have to sell to them? I'll admit, I don't buy gas at Exxon because they're not very LGBT friendly, so things like that. So it's a learning process. But I hope I answered your question. Again, thank you for your service. Yes, ma'am, you had a question. I did. I did. I was just telling Michael, my godson, I've had a person who's been harassing me for like 3 years, but it just stopped. Uh, Sending me hate mail, sending me pictures. I don't know how they got my cell phone. I try to remain a private person, but I've accepted that I'm not private. I guess I am a public figure. But I still face. I remember one time, and this was like in, I think, 2010 or 2011. I was traveling to Baltimore, and President Bush Jr. had just written his book. I think it was called W or something. And I was on a Southwest airline plane, and so I always get on early. I sat on the aisle seat. The man in the middle seat had the book. I saw it on his lap, And so I start to get anxiety because I'm like, please don't talk to me, please don't talk to me, because I start to worry. Because sure enough, as humans, if we take the bus, the train, the plane, we strike up conversations. Even when all of you start the new semester, you meet someone new in your class you have not seen before that may be in that cohort or something. You're like, so where are you coming from? What are you studying? Things like we strike conversations. It's being respectful. Sure enough, he struck up a conversation. What are you going to Baltimore for? Oh, I'm giving a speech. What do you talk about? Oh, I talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, what's the topic? I said, well, I'm working with members to repeal Don't Ask, I'll Tell. Or I helped, remember, this was 2011, so we had to resign the repeal. I said, I worked with members of Congress to sign the repeal Don't Ask, I'll Tell. Oh, opens the book, starts reading. The plane, we finally land in Baltimore. Well, have a good day, sir. Not a single word. Why? I don't know. Maybe because he just doesn't like me. Because I said, but before that, it was like, because I always travel in shorts. He sees my leg, the prosthetic, and he was like, "Thank you for your service. Thank you so much." That all changed the minute I said I came out as gay in 2007, and everything changed. You could just feel it, the whole demeanor, everything changed. I was not worthy in his eyes, and I struggled with that. And then I had to process. I feel like crying now because it hurts, and then to just say that's his ignorance, Eric. I am worthy in my life, you know, and in reality, that's what I was fighting for. His opinion. He has a right to that opinion, you know. And so, but I do face it. I do face it. Um, I face isms. Let me tell you, like when I was telling you about the ring, an ism. Um, when I'm in the doghouse with my husband, not often, but I'll go buy roses at the grocery store. I work at a university. I'm an adjunct professor now. So I wear like polo shirts from the university and slacks, and I go and my hair's short, but I will buy roses, and the cashier sees the roses, mainly females. Guys just sometimes don't express their sensitivity side or something, but the female will be like, "Oh, these are beautiful. Your wife's gonna love them." We call that heterosexism. She thinks I'm straight because she sees the haircut, the polo shirt. She sees the ring, and she assumes I have a wife because she assumes I'm straight. And I kindly just correct her and say, well, they're not for my wife. I have a husband. Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. I'm like, no, 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 no. It's fine, but I have a husband. It doesn't mean that we're bad people because we make those assumptions, but it's a learning process. And really, how here's another thing. I remember it was right before the 2008 election. We already had our candidates. The country was going to change because the possibility of voting or electing the first African American president ever, which I was so happy to see, right? I have Purple Heart plates because you've seen plates with DV, disabled veteran, things like that. This older gentleman, I want to say he was in his 70s or 80s, and he comes up, he's like, military? Yes, sir. He goes, well, being military veteran, then you're probably like me. I hope that in monkey does not get into office. That's what he told me. Because he assumed I was military, that I can be Republican, conservative, or I can be racist. He assumed all that. I turned to him and I said, no, sir, you don't know me. Because he said, I know we're alike. I said, we are nothing alike. And I didn't curse or anything, but I got in a car and I started crying. Because I said, you ignorant, but I'm like, don't let labels, just because I'm gay, or don't let labels identify someone until you get to know them. It'll get you in trouble. So, but again, I'm still learning. I'm still learning. I am not perfect. I will learn till the day I leave this earth. So I hope that answers your question. Sometimes I go off on another like spiral. So yes, sir. What do you ask them to call you? Okay. Yeah. Uh, yep. I think since I've been here, how many times have I called you ma'am, Whitney? Quite a bit. Dr. Crusoe, I think I've called you sir. Yeah. It's not that I don't, and again, I understand because I had a student who last fall, her name was Hannah. She identified as non-binary. So I also work in field education for the practicum. I teach graduate students. And her faculty liaison would come on the Zoom call and say, "Good morning, ladies. Good afternoon, ladies." And Hannah changed her name to Rowan, and Hannah kept telling Vanessa, "Do not call me lady. I am non-binary. If you say, good morning, Rowan," or she said, or you could use they, them, us, things like that. I get it because I've heard people stress, like, I think that's stupid. And I'm like, do you like to be validated? Do you feel authentic? Well, of course. Do you feel respected? Well, of course. I said, then that's what that person's asking. You know, I see what you're saying. But in the military, it's not really that they're doing it on purpose. It's kind of embedded in us as a sign of respect because they do respect you as the professor. Um, but Vanessa was replaced as Rowan's faculty liaison because she still kept doing it, and Rowan kept telling her not to do it or asked her not to do it, and so they replaced her because she just wasn't getting it, and Rowan was upset, and Rowan should feel authentic and respected, and so my advice is just to keep telling them, but again, some may never really get it. And not saying that they're bad, it's just a sign of respect. They don't think that you're not worthy because you are worthy. It's just a sign of respect. It's embedded in us. I still act military so much. I try not to be military with my students because I did walk out on them once because they were just misbehaving. So I couldn't make them do push-ups, so I walked out on them. So thank you. I hope that answered your question in a way. There is no other. No, I understand. I try to empathize with you. I really do. Uh, but it's you can, the only thing that's, I guess, my advice is to just keep reminding them, and then you have that conversation with them. Really? What was that? That, but you shouldn't have to be changing. No, no. But again, let's just say as this is a learning lesson. Let's just say you do decide, and here you go, hypothetical situation. You do decide to come, more feminine, makeup, dress, or change your appearance. A military person may say, and again, it's respect. They may say, "How's your morning, ma'am?" So, I mean, and again, it's because it's a learning process. They're trying. The only way we learn is to have that dialogue to teach them. Yeah. And again, until you started speaking, I didn't even know. So I will never call you SIR again. How exactly until we started having that conversation. And so it is nice to meet you, Professor. Thank you. Thank you. Sure, Albert. This is, I mean, we're learning. This is college. I, yeah, yeah. I almost, I almost did it with Dr. Crusoda when you were walking me out because I almost went, "Where's the head?" Which is the restroom. Yeah, and I corrected myself. I said, "Where's the restroom?" But I almost said head. You know, I still cut my hair, but all even retirees they've grown ponytails and things like that. But people, yeah, people, it's just embedded in us. So I actually grow a beard now, which of course Marines were told for the rest of their lives you must shave every day. I'm like, I'm not, in the military anymore. Although I am a Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine, so I am still a Marine in a way, I guess. I don't know, but thank you for that question because it does start a conversation. There was a question over here. I thought I saw a hand up. So I think I hear stomachs growling, not mine, but I think we're ready, Whitney, for lunch, and I hope some of y'all can stay. And if you have other questions, I'll still be here. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. If you want a book, pick up a book, bring it to me, and I'll sign it. But again, thank you for this blessing. I never play the lottery because people say you're lucky to be alive, Eric. I'm not lucky. If I played the lottery and won, that is huge luck. I am very blessed, appreciative, grateful, and just thankful to be alive and thankful to these for these opportunities to be amongst such warm-hearted individuals. Again, I don't have all the right answers, and remember, nobody owns your happiness. Let's live life and let's enjoy it. And thank you so much. Oh, food is served.